Good morning, friends. I am Dr. Vincent, Assistant Professor, Department of Orthopedics. Today, we are going to see the class about the supracondylar fractures in children. These supracondylar fractures in children, that is most common fracture, that the age group is between 0 to 5, and this supracondylar fracture in clinical practice, it is very common presentation in emergency department. Here, the supracondylar fracture, here we are going to discuss the supracondylar fracture of humerus in children. Here, more than adults, the supracondylar fracture is most common only in the children's. Why? Because of tendency of mechanism of fall of the victim, that is the patient will fall with extended elbow or flexed elbow. Since we are dealing with an immature bone for the children's, the fracture can be incomplete or complete. Here, radiological assessment, as we all know, the preliminary examination will be the radiological examination, that is X-ray. That should be taken in two views. One anteroposterior view and another is lateral view. Here, another, it can be that we can see in Jones view in injured elbow post reduction with the elbow in full extension. This will tell you how much you have been manipulating the fracture site and how it has come out post reduction. You can check with an Jones view. Here, anteroposterior view. Anteroposterior view, that is, we want to assess the Bowman's angle, that we are going to discuss in the later slides. The Bowman's angle, the angle formed by the lateral epiphyseal line and the long axis of the humerus, which gives approximately 80 degree. Here you can able to see, here it is in long axis, perpendicular, a long axis of a humerus which is perpendicular to the physis, and here you are going to draw in another long axis of a line which is crossing the physeal line. These two lines makes an angle that is called Bowman's angle. Here, humero-ulnar angle. This is also of clinical importance. The humero-ulnar angle, it is otherwise known as metaphyseal diaphyseal angle. This is also very important to assess the how far the patient has gotten post-reduction stability of bone. Here you can able to see a line which is crossing from the long axis of the humerus and long axis of the forearm. This forms an angle which can be used to measure how far the reduction has been achieved. In lateral view, you can always see an teardrop sign. Teardrop sign is you can able to see in a faint line structure which is seen in an X-ray that will tell you how far the distal fragment is aligned with the proximal fragment. It's an anterior dense line represents the post margin of an coronoid process. Okay. Post dense line represents the anterior margin of an oligoclonal fossa. Inferior margin is capitulum. Elbow fracture in children. The anatomical landmarks. Anterior humeral line, it is drawn along the long axis of the anterior to the humeral cortex. It passes through the middle of the capitulum. Here you can able to see the line which is from anterior to the humerus and another line which is passes to the middle of the capitulum. The capitulum is angulated anteriorly about 30 degree angulation. The appearance of distal humerus is similar to that of an hockey stick. It is not a straight bone. it is like a hockey stick. It's curved anteriorly. It should be taken into account so that post reduction, how you are going to see, it should not be straight. It should be angulated anteriorly. That is 30 degree of angulation is the normal variant. A shaft condylar angle, it is 30 degree. This is, as we discussed in the before slide, that is 30 degree. The shaft condylar line. Shaft means the humerus shaft, midpoint of the humerus shaft. You are drawing a long axis, long line, perpendicular to the ground, and another line which is perpendicular to the condyle or midpoint of the condyle. This forms an angle. Yeah, this anterior humeral line, as we discussed before, passes through the middle third of ossification center of capitulum. Elbow fractures in children, radiological anatomy. Why we are saying the radiological assessment? Because the radiology plays a very important role in assessing whether the fracture is present or not. There are several other conditions which mimics like a fracture following a trauma, like an pulled elbow or only a ligamentous injury. That too specifically in children will mimic like a fracture. So that radiological assessment should be done very exactly to find out the fracture line and how you are going to treat, whether it's conservatively or surgically. You are going to see how you are going to differentiate, and you are going to classify, and you are going to plan the treatment accordingly. Elbow fractures in children, radiographic anatomy and landmarks. We are seeing the same thing. These are the another line which tells that the anatomy of distal humerus is restored. Radiocapital line should intersect the capitulum. That is the main criteria. Again, I'm telling it's a radiocapitellar line should intersect the capitulum. Okay. Make it an habit to evaluate this line on every pediatric elbow flip so that you don't miss the fracture. Okay, this should be, a line should be drawn, which should be intersecting the capitulum. Yeah, test your orthosense here. What is the problem you see here? You can able to see a fractured bone which is present in them. First, you always assess whether it's a skeletally matured bone or it's an immature bone. Here you can able to see the physis, so that we are dealing a case of pediatric immature bone. Okay, then we are seeing an elbow joint here, that is distal part of humerus, and you are seeing in the film the radius, proximal part of radius and ulna. Here you can able to see an fracture which is classically on the ulna side, and you are going to see a multiple line which is intersecting over the distal part of the humerus. Here you can able to see the radial head which is not in the position at all. So that always make a practice that you take an X-ray of a normal limb to assess and compare the fracture. The supracondylar humeral fracture is the most common fracture. As we all know, it is around over the elbow joint. Okay, it is 60% of elbow fractures. If it is around the elbow, it is 60%. So that it should be given most in priority and importance. 95% of extension type injury, which produces posterior displacement of a distal fragment. Here we have two types, flexion type and extension type. Okay, here 95% is an extension type. Extension means the distal fragment gets extended, that is, it is going posteriorly. It can be associated with a distal radius or forearm fracture. always try to assess one joint distal and one joint proximal if you get a fracture case, because you must not you must not leave any fracture unnoticed. That should be clear cut. Examination includes fracture examination includes examination of fracture joint, fracture site, and one joint proximal and one joint distal always examine to avoid neglection of fracture site. Because usually in a practice, the elbow fracture, we always see only the elbow. It can be associated with distal fractures like forearm fracture or proximal fractures of elbow. That is like in a shaft of humerus fracture or proximal humerus fracture as such. A classification, why we are classifying each and every fracture, so that we are planning for a treatment. Okay, extension type, as we discussed before, it is most common type and it accounts for 95% of total fracture of this supracondylar fracture. Only flexion type is 5%. Supracondylar fracture, it's a very common in children less than 10 years, and mostly it is seen of children of age group of 0 to 5. When the child starts walking and at the age of 9 months or 1 year, it is very prone for all external injuries due to frequent fall. And you must always think of common fracture first. Because of bony architecture, this region, the supracondylar region, is weak. Most common in children with hyper flexibility. Okay, hyper flexibility in the sense we are telling about the ligamentous laxity, because if you fall, if you have a rigid ligament, it will the line of transmission of force differs. If you have a flexible joint, usually you have a fracture which is of flexed type. Okay, if flexible means if you have fall with outstretched hand, a child is fall with outstretched hand, it will have a fracture in elbow with extension injury more than this extension injury is more commoner than flexion type. Mechanism of injury as seen in this picture, fall of outstretched hand. Okay. Quick reviews and facts regarding the fracture. It is 84% is commoner in less than 10 years. The age, when you compare, it is more in boys when compared to the girls. Side, it is more commoner is left side rather than right side. Left side account for 58% and right side account for 42%. Nerve injuries, always any joint, must always think for any associated soft tissue neurovascular injuries. Okay, nerve injury, it is 7%. The nerve which is injured are median nerve, radial nerve, and ulnar nerve, as you all know. Clinical feature, the child will be brought by the attenders with complaints of history of fall with outstretched hand while playing. Failure to use the upper limb, the child will be will be holding, exactly to say, will be holding the injured limb by using an uninjured limb, and it won't allow you for a proper examination because of severe pain. Failure to use the upper limb, the child cannot able to use the limb properly. That is the main chief complaint. Gross swelling and tenderness over the joint will be present. S-shaped deformity will be present. S-shaped means the fracture site will be appearing like an S-shaped. Anterior puckered sign, it is positive. There will be anterior puckering of skin or the anterior aspect of the elbow. Crepitus will be present, as we all know. Any fractured side will have crepitus. Crepitus is nothing but bone to bone rubbing. It is called a crepitus. Then 3-point relationship is not maintained in intra-articular fracture, but in here, since it's an supracondylar fracture is an extra-articular fracture, the 3-point, that is the medial and lateral epicondyle of humerus and olecranon, this forms an triangle. This triangle, the relationship will be distorted in a case of intra-articular fracture, but we are dealing a case of supracondylar fracture, which is an extra-articular fracture, so that the 3-point relationship, 3-point bony relationship is maintained here. That is the significant thing, that once if you examine the elbow with 90-degree flexion, the 3-point bony relationship is maintained, then directly you must think of an extra-articular fracture. That should be a fracture which is above or below the level of the joint. Okay. The examination of elbow injury. Yeah, vascular status, as we all know, any fracture you must always go for an vascular examination, that is artery and vein should be examined. Radial artery pulsation, most important, and capillary refilling of an affected part, that is distal to the fracture site. Always you must check for an vascular status. You must look for an pulse, and you can look for an capillary refilling. Neurological status, that is median, radial and ulnar. You must always check it. Okay. Check finger movements. Check for stretch sign. That is always any swelling will cause compression of underlying neurovascular bundles, that is nerves and veins, which causes compartmental syndrome. Compartmental syndrome is an immediate post-traumatic complication which should be dealt very seriously to avoid compressing of underlying neurovascular structures. Okay. Here, as a clinical image which shows an S-shaped deformity. If it is S-shaped, you can see here the anterior part of the forearm, that is the distal part of the humerus. That is this is anterior and this is posterior. Okay, the fragment which is dislodged posteriorly, that is extension type, as we studied before. It is most common type, extension type. It is most common type which we encounter. Okay, so that it forms an deformity like an S-shaped curve. Yeah, here you are seeing an swelling which has an puckering sign positive. Here it is an ecchymosis. You can able to see an ecchymosis, which is blood collected under the skin because of severe crush injury of an underlying soft tissue. The associated bony fracture, you will encounter a soft tissue injury. See here, it is a posterior, this is an extension type, posterior dislodgement of fragment which causes an S-shaped deformity. Puckered sign, you can able to see this is an puckered sign, and it is always otherwise known as brachialis sign. Yeah, brachialis sign, proximal fragment, you can able to see that is dislodged posteriorly, which causes a severe soft tissue injury. Milking maneuver. Milk soft tissue over proximal spike. You must always milk from the proximal to the distal so that you align the proximal fragment towards the distal fragment. Milking should be done. So that it should be done gently to avoid underlying soft tissue, or that means mainly we are dealing the elbow fracture. Nerves arteries are very important in this aspect, so that you must take care of those things while attempting foreign reduction. Yeah, you can able to see here it's a radial nerve. Because of the of overstretching, it can cause radial nerve or brachial or median artery injury. If it is varus or valgus angulated, here you can able to see it is varus angulated. It's angulating and laterally, that is away from the center, so that it hasn't stretch over the radial nerve. Okay, if the fracture site it is angulated medially, that is towards the center, that we call as valgus, towards the center. Posterolateral, this is posteromedial towards the center. You will find an brachial artery or median nerve injury. Okay, here you can able to see a fracture which is posteriorly displaced, that is flexion type. Supracondylar humerus fracture classification. Gall-Lenz-Stein, it is very simple. Type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 1, it is non-displaced. Type 2, it is angulated, displaced fracture with posterior cortex intact. That is the only one part of the cortex, that is anterior cortex, is only breached or it is broken. The posterior cortex is intact. Okay, complete displacement with no contact in between. That is type 3. The fracture fragments, the proximal and distal fragment, it is of 2 units, separate units. There is no continuity in between. Gall-Lenz type 1, you see a fracture with not much of displacement, no displacement. You can only see a fracture line which is very faint. Yeah, the red line shows the fracture, and you are going to draw in line, anterior humeral line, and you can able to see the fracture site. Yeah, I can note the red arrow, which is non-displaced fracture. It shows the posterior fat patch sign. That is, yes, dark black shadow which is seen in the X-ray posteriorly. Helpful in occult fat patch sign. That is, it is very helpful in occult fracture with effusion. Okay, oblique posterior fat patch sign, it is very important. Coronoid anterior fat patch sign is also important, which tells how far the force of injury it is. Yeah, it is, you can able to see anterior and posterior fat patch sign. These are some of the clinical images. Type 2, it is angulated. The anterior cortex is breached. Only posterior cortex is intact. Displaced, but posterior cortex is intact. Okay, and the arrow shows the breached anterior cortex and intact posterior cortex. And in angulated displaced fracture with intact posterior cortex, in many cases the type 2 fracture will be impacted medially, leading to varus angulation. The varus post position must be considered when reducing these fractures, applying the valgus force for realignment. Total displacements in type 3, it is posteromedial, posterolateral. You can see posteromedial, posterolateral fragments. Management, all suspected case should be splint with 20 to 30 degree of elbow before sending for an X-ray. Neurological examination is very important. Vascular assessment, peripheral pulse like radial artery, capillary refilling. If you have the facilities like Doppler test, you can do. Evaluate for ipsilateral injury anywhere from wrist to the sternocleidomastoid joint, that we have said before, discussed before. Type 1 undisplaced fracture, simple immobilization with the posterior slab in 90 degree, that is with cuff and collar, it is more than enough. X-ray to be repeated after 7 days and documented for any displacement. Slab kept for 3 weeks. Yeah, you can able to see an It is a slab which is hanging or the IV stand to reduce the swelling. Post reduction X-ray, you can able to see a fracture X-ray here. This is pre reduction, post reduction, yeah, the fracture is reduced. Treatment for type 2, it is close reduction under anesthesia, or can apply, you can try for the reduction at OPD basis. If a patient child is not cooperative, then you can go for an anesthesia induced reduction. Traction is applied following by a correction of rotation deformity. Extension deformity is corrected with pressure by thumb over the olecranon. Necessity of hyperflexion, that is very important. If it is extended, always must have an hyperflexed, so that it sits, the fragment, distal fragments sits aligned, gets aligned with the proximal fragment, so that hyperflexion, it is important in this case. Type 3 fracture, the closed, that is, it is both the fragments are not in contact with each other, so that always try for percutaneous K-wire or pin placement. Open reduction K-wire technique is also done if it is a difficult fracture. Method of close reduction under GA, you can see a traction and counter traction applied, and you are correcting the rotational component of a fracture, and you are going to press over the breast using your thumb, the olecranon tip, so that the flexed fragment is going and sitting with the exactly the proximal fragment. The extended fragment, the extended fragment, it will go and sit with the proximal fragment, and you are hyperflexing with the pronation of hand, so that you manipulate the fraction way it is reducing in your anatomical position. Cross pinning, divergent pinning, parallel pinning, any types you can do. Here, see, you are reducing the fracture by using a K wire. Always see the fracture is reduced perfectly or not. Lateral pin placement, AP and lateral views are two views you can able to see. Jones view, with this C-arm can be useful to helpful for verify the reduction. Okay, you can see the pin placement over the distal humerus holding the fracture site. Here, this is a K wire which is attempted percutaneously. Indication for surgery, any ischemic sign, that is Volkmann's ischemia, irreducible fracture, vascular injury, and open fracture. Here, a medial column collapse, it can always lead to a deformity from simple close reduction if not stabilized, the stabilization done properly. Median impaction, type 2, it is not dealt properly, then you will have an varus deformity. See, the child is having a cubitus varus deformity. Supracondylar fracture, nerve injury, that is incident is 7 to 16%. Anterior interosseous nerve, it is most commonly injured, that is the branch of radial nerve. In many cases, assessment of nerve integrity is limited because of child can not always cooperate with the examination part. Carefully document pre-manipulation exam and post-manipulation examination should be done. Supracondylar fracture, only 5% have associated distal radial fracture. Physical examination is very important. Radiographical conclusion, that is radiological, you must be you must have an evidence that there is no fracture distally or proximally. Supracondylar humerus fracture is associated with other injuries like nerve injuries as well as vascular injuries. Okay, here you can able to see a pink and pulseless extremity, so that you will have the fracture is having an associated vascular injury also. Supracondylar humerus fracture complication, malunion, that is very most commonest complication. Volkmann's ischemia, vascular injury, loss of reduction, loss of elbow motion, pin tract infection, that is post-operatively, neurovascular injury with pin placement. Diagnosis, severe pain. Volkmann's ischemia can be diagnosed by clinically by patient symptoms like severe pain. Stretch pain can be seen in an ischemic episode. That post immobilization, always you can encounter a myositis mass, that is an extra osseous calcification occurring over the anterior aspect of an elbow, which forms a mechanical block, which here this part we will deal in the myositis calcification, we will deal in a separate class. That's a separate topic. Why to prefer K-wire? Because no periosteal hinge is present, rotation of distal fragment can be controlled, and fracture tends to rotate in less flexion. In fresh cases with a swollen elbow, not possible to get an hyperflexion more than 90 degree. If the cast after 2 weeks, 2 to 3 days, swelling decreased, cast becomes loosened, again rotation is lost. Supracondylar fractures, flexion type, it is rare. Distal fracture fragment, it is anteriorly and it is flexed. Ulnar nerve can be injured and must reduce with an extension. Here direct injury over the elbow, flexed elbow, fall with an flexed elbow. That is the main cause. Here same management, K-wire technique, surgical technique, you must use in K-wire. Thank you, friends. Today we had a wonderful discussion about the supracondylar fracture. I hope this presentation will be helpful for you, and please do continue reading about the supracondylar fracture, and next class we will come out with another topic. Thank you.